Good afternoon. No, it's good morning. It is a crisp, rainy day in Dallas, Texas right now. And it looks like that trend is going to continue through the rest of the day, which is extremely unusual for May. These are very low temperatures that, since I've lived here, I've never seen. And that's a good thing, kind of. There's a lot of people said, oh, it's going to be a hot summer. It's going to be a hot summer. Yeah, I don't see that because I was here. I forgot what year it was, but May 1st it hit 100 degrees and we didn't see it dip for, God, was it like 60 days? It was brutal. 2006 was really bad too when I came back to Dallas. Okay, this is going to be kind of a controversial topic because it's about Colonial Pipeline and the news, of which I made a mistake last night and I watched, of all people, Sean Hannity. Don't ask me why. But I did. And he just reaffirmed why I don't watch him or any of these other idiots. So Colonial Pipeline has been hacked. Now, this pipeline, its predecessor was called the Big Dig. This was built back in the 40s to get fuel from Houston to New York and New Jersey. Well, why would you need that in the 40s? Well, you got to go back to World War II. Having convoys of refined fuel go through the Gulf of Mexico was not what you would say an easy task because the U-boats controlled the seas. So if you're coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, look at your map. There aren't a lot of places to go. And since the U.S. was just getting into the war, we had not come close to perfecting anti-submarine warfare, destroyer escorts, anything. So that would have been a heyday for the U-boats. And Florida probably would have been covered in crude oil, which that would not have been good. So this line has been there for a long time, and I'm sure it has been upgraded as years go on. But one of these anchors from Fox, I didn't even know it was there. Well, I'm shocked. Just imagine half of them even have a thought, but that's another story. Well, I want to go back to a date of August 2017. Does that ring a bell for anybody, especially those in Texas and Oklahoma? For those who don't remember, it was called Hurricane Harvey. And how most of us were exposed to it across the country was of how many people came together because we were still going through the after effects of Obama and all the racial strife, and the news just went nuts. All the news did, for the most part, of how people from across the country came together, black, white, green, orange, red, it didn't matter, to help these people that got flooded in Houston. It was terrible. I mean, I have friends that lived north of Houston in a suburb, and they were lucky, but they said the water didn't come into their house, but the streets were covered because Houston's low lying. You get too much rain, the storm system can't work because there's no place for the water to go. The tributaries, the creeks, the rivers, they're full. There's not enough head pressure to push the water out into the sea because that's ultimately where it's all going. But the real thing that happened was the news. And I just about lost my mind. And I even argued with liberal friends over this. Some idiot, whether it was a radio station or a TV station, but it wasn't national yet. But this report came out that we are having a shortage of fuel. There was no shortage of fuel. Yes, the refineries had to shut down so their workers could be safe and get them out of harm's way. What a novel idea. But the minute somebody got wind of that, they lost their mind and started spreading falsehoods of a shortage of gasoline. And what did that turn into? The biggest economic man-made disaster that I've seen since I've lived in Texas and Oklahoma. People weren't thinking. They went and filled up their cars whether they needed it or not. And they kept doing it to the point where they emptied every gas station in Texas, for the most part, probably half of them in Oklahoma, over what? Over a ignorant news report that was factually untrue. There was no shortage. There are depots where this fuel goes to. That's where the tanker trucks that you see at Quick Trip and Exxon and any other station, 7-Eleven, they get it from a depot. The depots had fuel. They know how much to buy. They know what the daily average usage is. And that's what they do. No, not with this. 2 weeks. It took 2 weeks for some of these stations to get their tank because people in general are stupid and the media expects them to follow their lead, and they did. So here we go again. Now, granted, Colonial is a major pipeline. No one's going to argue that. But how much traveling was going on last year during the pandemic? The refineries hadn't shut down. They're still producing. They're still working. Because manufacturing is still going. Electricity still has to be generated. So the refineries are working, but the majority, there are no flights, no passenger commercial flights, very few private. Puddle jumpers aren't moving. Now, trucks were moving. They have to. The day the trucks shut down, you can just shut down any country. Because what is it? 90% of our goods move by truck? Yeah, that's about right. Now, I looked up some stats, and according to 2020, we use 18.12 billion barrels of oil a day, and they produce 18.4. Now, there was an asterisk by it because this was an average, and they didn't have factual data because of the pandemic. So that means there's a 102.2 billion, excuse me, not million, but billion barrels a day. And that's across the country. So Sean Hannity, in his infinite wisdom, immediately says there's going to be a gas shortage. The minute you say gas shortage, what do people do? They don't think. They don't ponder what's going to happen. They think about themselves. They all go to the station. They fill up whether they need it or not. And this is what's going to cause it again, only this is going to be a lot worse than Harvey. Yes, Colonial was hacked. They still have systems working. Not the whole pipeline, but they still have systems working. There are still storage facilities that are full of fuel. And the press is going to convince you that you can't get any more gasoline. Diesel drivers know better. But the general public doesn't. So I already saw one report where gas stations are reporting shortages. Yep, because we're going through what we did in 2017 with Harvey. People like Hannity open their mouths. They don't think about the repercussions. Now, his is politically driven. There's no doubt about it. That's why I don't watch the news, or when I do, I have a real hard time stomaching it because it's so damn biased and it serves no purpose. So you can guarantee that no telling how many thousands of stations are going to say out of gas. And then you're going to hear stories related to the shortages we went through back in 73 and 74 and all that crap that we had going on with Middle Eastern oil. Now, how did this happen? Well, I have a friend that works at a window company. They got hit with ransomware. How did it happen? They don't know, but they did look at how much it was going to cost to redo the system to stop this and said, shit, we can't afford that. And they paid the ransom. Now, this is a huge window company. They've gone through a couple of buyouts in the last 5 years, and now it's a giant. I think they're second largest in North America on window manufacturing. They paid it. Now, the pundits, both sides, some are going to try and blame Trump. Some are going to try and blame Biden. I'm not interested in blame. I'm interested in results. Did this, because they've known about ransomware, this is nothing new. Whether it's the DOD, the FBI, Homeland Security, any of the organizations you want to talk about, they've known about this. So what have they done in the past to combat it? I don't know. How did they combat it under Trump? We did hear of a lot of attacks. We heard that some were thwarted and some were not. And I'm sure you've seen that Army recruitment ad where the gal's talking to her mom, and her mom, I think it's her mom or her dad, and they're like, honey, why do you want to do this? And she goes, because I get to work with the best cyber hackers in the world, and I'll be on the front line. Well, that would fall under the DOD. So what have they been doing? A president can only do so much. A president can send out directives to all the agencies on what needs to be done. Now it's up to those agencies to execute. What have they been executing? This is what needs to be focused on. What have they been doing? They've known about this. So how did they confront it in the past? I don't know. Do you think you're actually going to hear a story on that? Did Trump's people fumble the ball? Did the changeover in administration cause confusion in priorities? I don't need to hear politicians grandstanding, which is what they are so good at doing, and trying to deflect from each other's inequities and buffoonery, for a better term. I want to see action. I want to see issues addressed. This is a big one. And for those of us that are in our 60s, we got to see the first attacks, cyber attacks and hacking attacks. And instead, like the movie War Games with Matthew Broderick, he gets in to the National Defense Whopper that handles our nuclear missiles and gets the damn machine to start playing a game, only the machine doesn't think it's a game, it thinks it's real. So we've known about hacking ever since the internet became available to everyone. And it hasn't stopped. We've, all the identity theft. How's that working? Why is it still happening? Banks know about it. What's their cybersecurity group doing? All the financial institutions, what are they doing? Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any stretch of the imagination. If you've listened to me, you understand that. But what I heard from that press conference yesterday from God, my handwriting is horrible. Randall and Neuberger, they kept focusing on it's the private sector. It's the private sector. Well, yeah, it is the private sector. But the way they phrased it, and even listening to Biden's speech yesterday, the conspiracy theorists are going to love this. The word nationalism came to mind. Nationalize the energy system in the United States. And the government's argument will be, we can handle it. We're going to put you all under an umbrella. We're going to be in charge of all of it. You can't keep the federal government from getting hacked. I mean, is this a possibility? I'm just throwing it out there. For those who love conspiracy theories. I haven't seen it pop up yet, but I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. But the point is, Americans are living in fear. There's got to be millions that wake up afraid of their shadow every morning. We saw it during Harvey. And they're just supposed to be rational humans. No, we're not. I was not one that bought into it. I sat back. It's like, I've got enough fuel. I know where I need to go. I don't need to top off. And I'm not going to be part of the panic buyers like we saw this time last year with toilet paper. What a bunch of crap. I'd like to know how many years those people are set up with toilet paper and cleaning products. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So here we go again. Yes, this is a big problem that they got hacked and that they had to shut down. Yes, they only, according to DarkSide, they only hit the administrative side, which that's what Colonial is saying. But it also reminds me of Y2K. Anybody remember Y2K? Oh my God, everything was going to shut down because the computer chips that were in everything were going to go back to zero. We were going to go back into the Stone Age. All the power was going to shut down. Nothing was going to work. Planes were going to fall out of the sky. Oh God, I remember all that crap. And that was fueled by the media. And here we go again. This is fueled by the media. Think, if you don't need gas, don't get it. Let those who are working fill their tanks. And if you're working, don't be one of these idiots that goes to the hardware store, picks up a bunch of fuel cans, jerry cans, fills them up and stores them in the house, because what they do, they store them in the garage. They don't realize the vapors are leaking out, and all it's going to take is a spark or a cigar or a pipe or a cigarette, light a match, and your house blows up because you were stupid. And the longer it sits, gas does have a shelf life. People, be smart. Pull your head out and think. I know I've got 3/4 of a tank right now. I'm in Texas. Am I worried? No. Why should I be? But the more the media talks about it, the more they come out with erroneous reports and scare the hell out of everybody, there will be a shortage across, 19 states? And it didn't have to be. And like I said, it took 2 weeks for the stations in Dallas, some 3 weeks. There might have been some that was 4, before the tankers could catch up. And all these stations could start selling gas again. This is not what we need. We need level-headed thinking. We need a media that will pull its head out and think before they speak, but they don't want to because they want to make everything political. In conclusion, I really want to know in DHS, Homeland Security, and DOD, what the hell are you people doing? What have you been doing for the last umpteen years? 10, 15. What have you been doing to thwart these attacks and find the perpetrators? I mean, one congressman said that, well, we need to pass immediate legislation that if they do this, that we're just going to kill them. When we catch them, we're going to kill them. Okay. You might want to read the Constitution on that one. I mean, what he described, I forgot his name. It was basically, we caught you, you're guilty, it's summary execution, there'll be no trial. You know, that would wake a lot of people up, but let's go through the procedures. Let's catch them, try them, put them in military court. Don't have it through a civilian court. Classified as a military crime, which now it's treason. You're going to have your tribunal, and then we're going to hang you. Once the guilty verdict comes in, you're just going to be hung. That I can get behind. But what this guy said was like, well, just catch him and shoot him. Yeah, that's not going to work. That's not going to work, is it? No. So for you folks that are east of Texas, that rely on this pipeline, think before you fuel. Because if you just run around willy-nilly and empty your gas tank, you're going to be screwed in the long run. Quit thinking short range. Think long range, and this problem won't be as big as what the media is playing it out to be. And that's all I've got on Colonial Pipeline.